Good afternoon. Welcome to episode 59 of the Blunt Talk Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Wright, coming to you from the beautiful and warm confines of Atlantic City, New Jersey. Wherever you may be watching or listening, I thank you as always. Like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel. You can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are available. And also check us out on Substack as well. Definitely happy to be back sitting in the chair talking to you guys. It's been a very crazy week, very busy week. A lot of news to get into, a lot of things that I've been posting. I know you guys have been checking and following and liking as well. I thank you as well. But a lot of updates, a lot of things to get to you, and I'm going to definitely get started into it right now. This episode is going to be pertaining to NFL training camp news and notes. However, we're just going to kind of like touch on pretty much not all 32, but loosely, the teams, other teams outside of Philadelphia. I have a separate episode for the Philadelphia Eagles. Very extensive episode on some of the camp things, but this is more or less a clear update on some of the other teams, what's going on in their camps, what's going on around the rest of the NFL, and what interesting news that I thought we could talk about. But nonetheless, get into this episode. We're going to start off with the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills and the Denver Broncos. And not really the Bills and necessarily the Broncos, but a former Denver Bronco, former GM and former quarterback of the Denver Broncos, Hall of Famer John Elway, spoke on a podcast recently and spoke on passing on Bills quarterback Josh Allen in the draft. I have also the links to this video for Buffalo Bills on SI.com. It'll also be in the video in the description. Essentially here, John Elway realizes that Josh Allen noticed he didn't pick him. Now, if you guys remember, Josh Allen was drafted in the 2018 draft. There was a lot of speculation with him coming out of Wyoming that he was going to be a high prospect or possibly a good quarterback if he was, mentored right or coached right. Kind of a, loose cannon, wild Bronco, for lack of better terms, hence, Wyoming Broncos, but whatever. Or Cowboys, whatever the hell their name is. Anyway, he played in Wyoming. But nonetheless, him being there, Elway was kind of interested in him, kind of was thinking maybe this guy could play. But as the scenario broke down, it was very interesting reading it and listening to him speak on it. Because after I heard the podcast, I wanted to read and do some further research on what exactly he meant. And boy, oh boy, was it interesting. Digging into it, John Elway and Brandon Beane had a trade set up. Now, this trade was kind of contingent on this, but I'll explain. Elway and Brandon Beane had a trade set up on draft night that year for the 2018 draft. The deal was contingent on Denver. So Denver was pretty much the initiator of the trade. And that trade would have given Buffalo the 5th pick in the draft. Now, keep in mind, Buffalo was trying to move up for a quarterback. They tried the whole Tyrod Taylor thing, They came out of the dregs of the J.P. Losman era. There were a lot of things that just hadn't really worked out for them in that position, and they were starved. They were completely starved for a quarterback. Hadn't really had one since Jim Kelly and Doug Flutie, So that being said, Denver decided against moving out of their spot, and they wound up picking Bradley Chubb. Now that's because the guy that Denver essentially wanted really was Denzel Ward, which was not a shock to me, but a little shocking. Because when you think about it, I naturally put into context, okay, Denver was either going for a defensive player or a quarterback that year in the draft. I mean, they hadn't really solved the quarterback position either. So it was very interesting to see that he really wanted a corner. Denzel Ward's proven to be a very good corner, one of the best corners in the league. So that, not a shock there. But I think what's really revealing is Brandon Beane didn't give up. Brandon Beane then conducted a trade with Tampa to then get the 7th pick, which then landed him Josh Allen. I have to say this. The interview was dope. Doing the research was even doper. Finding out some of the things, like them having the trade already situated and all that, that was cool. Here's the real to it, though. If you're a Denver Broncos fan, what the fuck does this do for you? I mean, you didn't get... So, John, it's great that you grabbed... you won Super Bowls when you played. It was great that you grabbed Peyton Manning and you won and we won a championship. We got the 2 Super Bowls. That's fantastic. You bombed the rebuild. You bombed it. I mean, you. I'm just going to mention some names. You guys tell me if any of these names sound familiar to you, because I'm going to mention the guys that he drafted first that were hits, okay, and then I'm going to go into the bust. To be fair, John Elway's draft picks. These are the hits. Some names of note. Von Miller, Derek Wolfe, the former defensive tackle, Sylvester Williams, defensive tackle, Bradley Roby, corner, Bradley Chubb, obviously just traded him to the Dolphins, but Bradley Chubb, good defensive pass rusher, and tight end Noah Fant. Most of those guys want to be as starters or contributors. No real argument there. Now let's get to the bus. Let's get to the reason why the Denver Broncos have been a futility since Peyton Manning and that Super Bowl win. Let's see. Paxton Lynch. Garrett Bowles at tackle. Bombed. Lloyd Cushenberry. Bombed. Albert Akubonum. Pardon me, bro, because I know I'm going to butcher this damn name, but Alberto, he's now actually a backup with Philadelphia, but bombed. Didn't work out. And you just never retooled the offensive line, Elway. I mean, he just never fixed it. So essentially, you talking about not getting Josh Allen, that's great. But if you're not getting Josh Allen, if you think that was the end-all, be-all, you didn't fix the offensive line. You didn't fix the offensive line. You didn't get enough pass rushers. You didn't. I mean, my God, like it's crazy that he got to walk away from this really unscathed. The current GM George Patton is catching more hell because obviously he made the decision to get Russell Wilson. A lot of decisions have been attached to him, but we got to remember he wasn't really given a situation where they were really set up to win. And in fairness, George Patton really does deserve some blame because now him and Sean Payton, they're kind of but again, in fairness, he inherited a very shitty roster, so it's not like they were bereft of talent. But Von Miller was older, DeMarcus Ware was gone, you had Bradley Chubb that was just coming into the mix. They didn't really have the guy though that could lead them, and then the defense was still playing well. If you remember, they still had Vic Fangio at the time. Then it was like a Vance Joseph Morph when he came in. It was just a lot going on in Denver, but I just thought it was ironic that John Elway was sitting here talking about it in hindsight. I really blew that. Yeah, look what you left the team. They're in shambles. They've been in quarterback hell since Peyton Manning left. So, yeah, it's just, like I said, interesting, man. Very interested to see him even come out and make those comments. And interesting to see that he actually didn't really want to try to solve that quarterback position. I guess Paxton Lynch and all that stung him. He had his eyes on Denzel Ward, but, at least Buffalo got their guy. And shout out to Brandon Beane and the Bills for, sticking to his convictions and making sure he was getting the guy that he wanted. And it ultimately worked out for him. Going next, this one was definitely good news throughout the week. Bears wide receiver DJ Moore getting his contract, signing a 4-year extension with the Bears. Deal includes $82.6 million guaranteed. Prior to Tyreek Hill today getting his contract, it ranked second among receiver contracts. I believe it's fourth now. I'll get into Tyreek's contract a little later, but nonetheless, shout out to DJ Moore because now he's behind Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, Tyreek Hill. He's behind those guys, but he's paid. He's paid now, and I think DJ Moore has been one of those guys where he's low key has put up good numbers. He hasn't necessarily had the best quarterback situations. Clearly has never really played on great teams, but has always been a solid pro, always been productive. Complete wide receiver, which kind of looking for hands, speed, playmaking ability. I love it. So, you got to give credit to the Bears. The Bears know what they're doing. They got Caleb Williams. They believe in Caleb. They're trying to essentially make sure that his draft picks and the guys playing around him are good enough to where, ultimately this team is prosperous and in a situation where, hell, they win 11 or 12 games. Now, I personally think they're probably going to win 9, but nonetheless, the Bears are doing what they need to have this team tooled up to win and be in a situation to possibly compete in the playoffs. Maybe win a game or two. Who knows? But definitely good to see that they're paying one of their own. DJ Moore getting that money. And shout out to DJ Moore and the Bears for getting that deal done. Next, we're going to stay within the division. This one was dealing with the Vikings. As y'all know, I've reported the Vikings were suffering at the cornerback position. They weren't really doing that great as far as injury-wise. God rest his soul. Kyrie Jackson, died in a car accident beginning of July. I touched on that in a previous episode. Again, rest in peace, Kyrie Jackson. They've been dealing with a ton of injuries. Just bad karma. Like it's like a damn black cat just ran through there. Just bad karma they've been dealing with as far as the Vikings in the cornerback position. However, help has finally arrived, I guess, in their situation. They signed quarterback Fabian Moreau. Fabian Moreau, if you guys remember, a little bit of a journeyman at this point in his career. He was drafted out of UCLA, played for the Redskins, just got finished playing for the Broncos last year. This obviously, like I said, I previously said on the previous episode, they were depleted at corner, so we knew they were going to definitely make a move here. What I like about this move, though, is this guy, if you really watched Fabian Moreau last year when he played in Denver, he was very solid. I mean, he ensured that Patrick Surtain, because guys, you know that teams aren't really going to try to threaten Pat Surtain, so you know he's going to get looks, and he really held his own. I mean, last year alone, 46 tackles, 7 pass breakups, 1 interception. He played the second most snaps? Yeah, he played the second most snaps on the team, 740 snaps. So he was getting burned. The guys were trying him. He played well. So I definitely didn't think that was a good signing for the Vikings. Also as well, the Vikings signed Duke Shelley and Kobe Francis. You know, guys that kind of, I believe it was Duke Shelley. He played with Byron Murphy before. So again, they're trying to build some continuity back there. You need that definitely in the defensive backfield. So I completely understand where the Vikings are coming from with this. It completely makes sense. And again, good signing by getting Fabian Moreau. However, more is going to be needed. They're definitely going to try to do their best there, but you got to give credit to the Vikings because they saw it was a problem. It was definitely going to be addressed, and as I said, they addressed it. And yeah, they signed him pretty much to a 1-year, $1.3 million contract. So it's not as if he's signing a major, deal, but decent money, good veteran player. Vikings needed him. Good signing. Going a bit further in the quarterback position, because that's the real thing we really want to get into when we're talking about the Vikings, because we kind of all know that Sam Darnold is the quarterback there for right now. However, we do know that J.J. McCarthy is in the wings. Obviously they drafted him within the first round in this year's draft. Basically, Coach Kevin O'Connell stated that Sam Darnold was basically the starter. J.J. will soon at some point get reps with the starters. Basically what that means is, he's showing promise, but he's not really there yet. And I really believe Sam Darnold has kind of basically earned this because we kind of forget he played, I believe, a couple snaps. He played a couple snaps, but he definitely played a game last year for San Francisco. The 49ers definitely needed him in that rescue duty. He played a little decent in Carolina in the beginning, didn't play as well in the second half of that year that he was a starter in Carolina. So it's just one of those things where I felt like maybe continuity, better quarterback coaching, better coaching period, being in a better room, that would help his game rise. And, they're saying that he's definitely going to be the starter, he's definitely going to get burned. I think it's going to be interesting because, again, they're in the division with Detroit, Green Bay, who I think definitely are better offenses than they have right now, even though they have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and they have T.J. Hawkinson. The quarterback plays will mean everything. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Sam Darnold plays and develops a camaraderie with these guys, and if it really develops the way they need to, because if it does, things could be possibly promising for the Vikings. But being that they have so many injuries at corner, it's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on there in Minnesota. And also finishing another tidbit with the Broncos, I definitely wanted to touch on, because this is, it's kind of like I mentioned the Broncos earlier with the whole Elway thing, so I definitely wanted to make sure I got this in. The Denver Broncos, Sean Payton says he, quote-unquote, this past Tuesday, skipped Zach Wilson's turn in the passing rotation. Wilson basically took 13 reps. I don't know why, this was even news. Have we seen Zach Wilson play? Does he look like a starting quarterback? If the answer in your mind was formulating yes, then you clearly probably have no idea what it takes to be a quarterback in the NFL, because he is nowhere near fucking ready to be a quarterback. You should not want him near a high school offensive line at this point. He's that inefficient, that inadequate. He needs to learn the game. He's not ready. So I don't even know why this was news. Jarrett Stidham is clearly one of Sean Payton's guys. He's got Bo Nix taking snaps. That's really the news. This is the news. So I thought it was just funny, more or less. That's why I brought it up, that they're talking about, Zach Wilson getting skipped. Of course he's getting skipped. What has he proven to not get skipped? Anyway, continuing further with the Broncos theme. Wide receiver Cortland Sutton received and when I want to quote, minor contract enhancement, up to $2 million available incentives. Cortland Sutton was happy. He said he was happy to get something done. Now he just wants to focus on the season and go forward. All of that is great. I don't really understand. I get it. Some of the guys that were drafted didn't really work out. Okay. Some of these guys, Tim Patrick's been suffering with injuries. When he's played, he's been playing well, but he's been injured a lot. Cortland Sutton's been good for you. You just got off Jerry Jeudy. You didn't grab a good receiver this year in the draft. I mean, nobody that I really could think of note that's make you say, oh, you know what? And again, I could be wrong, because again, we don't know who they're drafting and developing, but they haven't really been doing a good job of that for the past, 5 to 7 years. So that being said, it's interesting that they gave him this minor boost in the hamstring to keep him happy and pacified for this year, but they still refuse to give him the contract extension, which tells me and leads me to believe that they're definitely going to be looking for a wide receiver after the season. So shout out to Cortland Sutton for getting the incentives, a little bump in pay, but you've seen this last year with the Giants with Saquon Barkley. You've seen this with teams do this around the league. Kind of saw this again today with Tyreek. Again, I'll get to the Tyreek contract. Touch on that briefly, but it's kind of weird. Cortland Sutton, I don't think he's been a great player, but he's been a solid player for them. Definitely a guy that I think that he's been reliable when he's been out there. Strange times in Denver, and interesting to see. I guess Sean Payton's pretty much making him say you're going to have to play for your supper and prove that you're that guy. But we shall see. Hopping into some corporate news, but dealing with the NFL Players Association, kind of a low-key loss. News that kind of got shuffled under the rug, kind of pushed down in the middle of the week. I kind of noticed on Wednesday afternoon. The NFL Players Association, it was announced, loses a $7 million lawsuit to Panini, the trading card company, the historic world-famous trading card company, Panini. Panini for breaching a trading card deal with them. When I read into the details with this, and also I have links on this as well, this information came from via Pro Football Talk and via Eric Gardner via Puck, and that's Puck, PUCK.news. This was very interesting because I had to really do a deep dive on this. There was a lot of information in this. Essentially what happened was the NFL was this was in relation to the NFLPA terminating the exclusive contract between the union and the trading card company. Essentially, the NFL really wanted to switch sides and do a deal with Fanatics. No shock there. We know Fanatics is pretty much trying to corner the market. But nonetheless, what was real hinky and suspicious about it was Fanatics had hired several former Panini employees. Relying on a clause called a former change in control, the NFL used this as a ploy to essentially try to get out of their deal and swap and go with Fanatics. Panini said this is a breach of contract, we're going to sue. And it was successfully argued in court, and Panini pretty much said that this was a pretext for the NFLPA to switch to Fanatics. The judge agreed. And Panini also has a separate lawsuit with Fanatics as well, which it's I'll get into this, but this lawsuit, the separate lawsuit is a separate antitrust lawsuit and a separate antitrust and interference lawsuit against Fanatics. So bear with me. Essentially, they're being sued for the NFLPA was being sued by Panini for a change of control for breach of contract. Essentially, the NFLPA wanted to switch to Fanatics to do their trading cards. No longer really want to do the deal with Panini. So once Panini lost employees, they went to Fanatics mysteriously. Fanatics grabs them up, and then all of a sudden, they claim the NFL claims that Panini's losing control. They're losing power. We get what's going on. That being said, federal judge snooped this out, and Panini won a lawsuit. Big lawsuit. And Fanatics is low-key catching hell. And Michael Rubin, CEO, has been catching hell. It's going to be very interesting to see how some of these lawsuits pan out. They clearly didn't win this one. And they said that Fanatics wasn't a witness in this proceedings, but they were there present, which again makes sense because why wouldn't they be? They know that they're going to be dealing with this company again very soon. The litigation game is very crazy. I mean, between the Sunday NFL ticket, NFLPA getting sued by Panini, NFL's catching hell all over the place, and it's just interesting to see how the tactics the shady, dark little business tactics that get employed to try to get out of these contract deals that have been set for forever. Because people don't, if you don't really know, Panini's been had this deal with the NFL for, I believe, well over 20 years. So very shady how everything played out. But happy to see Panini won, and NFLPA definitely took a loss on this one. Hopping next on this one, we're going to Bucks camp. Baker Mayfield praises rookie wide receiver Jalen McMillan out of Washington at camp. If you guys remember, Jalen McMillan was a star wide receiver at the University of Washington, played for the Huskies. He played with Roma Dunze, real good wide receiver. If you remember, Jalen McMillan hurt his knee last season, and which caused him to slide to the third round of this year's draft. Landed in a Bucks lap. Bucks happily took him. A lot of praise from Baker Mayfield on Jalen McMillan. He said that McMillan is, quote, is rounding, quote, back to true form, and that he feels McMillan's true form is a stud. And I got to be honest with you. Jalen McMillan looked good while he was at Washington. It's so unfortunate to see him catch that knee injury. Glad to see that he landed with somebody. He didn't fall too far in the draft. He fell in the third round. The Bucks kind of low-key need a young guy to draft and develop because, let's be honest, Mike Evans had a great year playing for that contract last year. Yeah, I mean, he's been one of the most consistent wide receivers in not just Bucks history, but NFL history. We know Chris Godwin, prior to the knee injury, was a stud. He's still serviceable, still a 1,000-yard receiver, just maybe not the guy he once was. Excuse me. That being said, you kind of realize that they're getting up there in age. They're in the early to mid-30s. You need a young guy to kind of draft and develop. So this is good that he's building a rapport with Jalen McMillan, and he sees that he's kind of rounding back to form and, development, so he feels it could be a stud. It's great to see. Also, another thing of note coming out of Bucks camp, which was very important, Tristan Wirfs got his contract this week. Signed a 5-year, $140 million extension. I believe it was $83 or $86 million guaranteed. I'll have it within the links in the description, so you'll definitely be able to see it. But definitely good time so far in Bucks camp so far. A lot of good news coming out of there. Jalen McMillan, showing promise. Tristan Wirfs getting paid, but one of the best tackles in the NFL within the past few years. So this is all good. It's all good to see. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Bucks hop out the gates, because in the NFC South, having the Falcons, we're not really expecting much out of the damn Panthers, because let's be real, they really are still trying to climb out of that hole that they built for themselves last year. Let's really think about it. Saints, maybe the Saints are a threat, so the Bucks can possibly take control of this division again. So very interesting to see, and good things to hear coming out of Tampa. Pretty athletic. This one was a very interesting one. I definitely want to make sure that I go in depth with this one. Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's been in a lot of news, and don't think I'm talking about the Brock Purdy interceptions. I don't give a damn about Brock Purdy interceptions in training camp. I'm going to explain this to you because I've watched football all of my life and I've played it. I know this for a fact. Training camp is where you want these guys to make mistakes. That is what you call the lab, the classroom, the editing room, whatever analogy you want to use for it. You would much rather your quarterback make mistakes in camp than in the middle of a game, and you're like, wait, we worked on this in the middle of July and the beginning of August, and it's the beginning of September, and you're still making the same mistakes. Or it's January, and we're trying to make the playoffs, and you're making this mistake. Or hell, you're in the playoffs, and it's just, you want this all worked out. So I'm not going to harp on Brock Purdy's interceptions. I don't really care about that. What I am going to talk about, though, is his possible desire to be seen as a better player and to go harder to prove that he's an elite guy could possibly hinder or cost his team this year. Let me explain. Brock Purdy claims that he was ready for Tom Brady if Brady had became the 49ers quarterback. Now, in this article, we all know now, March 2023, there was flirtation between Kyle Shanahan and Tom Brady for bringing in Tom Brady to be on a one-year deal, leaving Tampa possibly to go to San Fran to be the quarterback for San Francisco 49ers. Now, ironically, Brady had his own separate thing going on. We all know now with his wife, with his former ex-wife Giselle Bundchen, the whole that caveat and business going on. But I'm not even talking about that. Let's just keep in focus, right? You got Brock Purdy, who got his elbow blown up in the NFC Championship game against Philadelphia. So he's out. He's getting that elbow worked on. Okay. Elbow's getting worked on. While the elbow's being worked on, his head coach is flirting with Tom Brady. So there was a lot of interesting quotes, and I'll definitely make sure that I put this in the description so you can read the quotes in there and see it. But it was very interesting. He said that while this was going on and he was getting surgery done, they said that Brady would have only, again, signed for a 1-year deal. Brock Purdy's quotes, he references, he kind of says how he references how, he understands it's Tom Brady, and, Kyle Shanahan is trying to save his job, and just trying to help the team, but, I essentially beat this guy in a game, and he's talking about the regular season game from the game where he replaced Jimmy Garoppolo that year, I believe it was 2022, where he replaced Jimmy Garoppolo, and they beat the Buccaneers 35-7. It was a complete blowout. But he kind of references, you want to get this guy. I'm going to put the quotes in there so you can definitely see this. But it was very interesting to hear that edginess from Brock Purdy. That I don't think is the problem. But when you hear him talking to Adam Silver as well, and he's talking about how he wants to be great and he wants to have that poise and that distinction like Brady, where he puts away a game in the second half and he's dominant and he's not playing in a bunch of close games. You're not that guy. We're not stupid. People who watch, do you understand why people are still questioning why you are that good, Brock Purdy? It's because we saw Jimmy Garoppolo. Hell, we didn't get to see Trey Lance long enough, but we saw Jimmy Garoppolo and we saw Nick Mullins with bums play decent. We know already it's the system. Matt Ryan won an MVP in Atlanta. It's the system. We're not dumb. So you saying all of this, fantastic. If he can reach those things and reach those goals that he has for himself, that is going to be fantastic news for the San Francisco 49ers, and that's going to help elevate them back into the Super Bowl conversation and possibly a chance at the Lombardi. All of that being said, do you think Kyle Shanahan kicked that field goal in the overtime in the Super Bowl because he trusted Brock Purdy, or do you think he was really trying to win the game? I can guarantee you, I'm willing to put my salary on it, that if you put Tom Brady in the San Francisco 49ers last year, and they're in that scenario, he does not kick that field goal. I have argued this time and time again. Whoever is willing to debate me on this, I will clearly debate you on this, and we can have a nice, educated conversation on this. Brock Purdy is not trusted by Kyle Shanahan. Hey, what's up? I know it sucks. The video just ended. But listen, you can catch this whole interview on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Links are in the description. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you. Have a great day.